What's going on here? It's Eric. I am a professor of cybersecurity at Panola.edu. Check us out. The Cybersecurity Networking and Intro to Digital Forensics program. There's something for everybody there, and our courses are online. Now, in this video, this is kind of a follow-up to our VirtualBox installation with Rocky Linux. Now, in this one, we're going to be doing a Ubuntu install, but the catch is we're in a Mac environment. Normally, our students are inside of Windows, and that's no problem because Windows is a common operating system for home use. But in this particular case, we're dealing with Mac because it is starting to grow out there. Now, the first thing we're going to do is go over to our actual browser here. We're going to move over to our Ubuntu page. Ubuntu.com/download/desktop is where I'm at. And we're going to visit the Ubuntu desktop homepage, or I'm already there, sorry. And we can see that we have different releases. Now, I'm going to be downloading 22.04.3 as the version of Ubuntu we need. And once I click on that link, I can go down and we can see that our download now, there it goes, it finally hit. You can see right there that the ISO is downloaded. And if you remember in the previous video when we were doing Rocky, this downloaded as an ISO. But you'll also notice that the Rocky download was 1.5 gigs. This is 4.7. The difference being that we're downloading the full install for Ubuntu on this one. So we're going to skip adding the graphical user interface. That's going to come by default in the Ubuntu install. So I'm going to pause here for just a second while this downloads, and then after it downloads, we'll come back and we'll start doing the install and setting up our VirtualBox. And after that long wait, it took here about an hour to download that. We have the Ubuntu 22.04.3 downloaded. You can see it's an ISO file inside of our downloads folder, and we are going to move that to our actual ISO or VM folder on the desktop. So we're going to right click on it and say copy. We're going to minimize this. And I apologize if I'm not getting all the shortcuts correctly. My use is not necessarily in a Mac, it's more in Ubuntu in Kali. So we're going to post that in our base VM folder, go back to our downloads and delete it out of, that was weird. But we're going to delete it out of that folder right there. So move to trash. Saving up hard drive space, right? Minimize that. Now we're going to open up our VirtualBox. Now we're going to create a new VirtualBox similar to what we did for Rocky Linux. And we're just simply going to click on New. We're going to call this one Ubuntu. Did I spell it right? Yep. And we're going to create this one in its own folder, just like we did Rocky as well, by going to Other. We're going to select Desktop in our VMs, and then we're going to select New Folder. And we're going to call this Ubuntu. Great. And on Open, you can see behind the scenes there that it created a, right there, Ubuntu folder, and it had right below the Rocky folder and the Rocky ISO. Speaking of ISO, we do want to select the ISO image. We're going to drop down on that and go to Other. We're going to go and select the Ubuntu ISO image right there. Click on Open. There we go. And we're going to skip the unintended install, but we're not going to do expert mode. We're just going to do a basic install and just click on Next. This one we're going to do the same 2 gigs of RAM, 1 processor to power the VM out of our host physical resource allocation. Click on Next. We're going to leave this one at 25 gigabytes, but we're not going to pre-allocate full size because we don't necessarily have all that hard drive space. We saw in the previous video where Rocky was at 20 gigs and we did not pre-allocate, so it started off just as a couple of megs. But as we installed the operating system and installed the GUI right after that for the graphical user interface, we saw that it jumped up to about 6 gigs. Same thing's going to happen here. Initially, it's going to be in the megs, but as we install stuff in Ubuntu, it'll go up all the way to a maximum of 25 gigs, and that's because we have that set here. If we pre-allocated the full size right now, it would just create a VDI file or a virtual disk for VirtualBox that would already be 25 gigs, and it'd just be filled up with zeros if you took a look inside of it until it was fully allocated. So we're going to click on next and look at our system status summary, what's going on. We're going to click finish, and that's how we bring in the Ubuntu virtual machine. Now at this point, we're just going to click on the start button and it's going to pop up. You can see it has a summary of the screen right there. Now here, I'm going to move up and down so that way we don't automatically go into the close that right there so it doesn't automatically select one. We have 4 different options here, and we're going to do the try or install Ubuntu. Now Ubuntu can run in a live environment, but we're going to make sure that we install it because we'll get into that live environment later on. That's more for the forensic side. What is that? So we're going to go ahead and select our try and or install Ubuntu so that way we have it on the actual virtual hard drive itself. And we're going to go through the actual setup. Now I'm going to mouse out of this for a second and move it back over to where we can see it just a little bit better. Come on, mouse, you can do it. I believe in you. There we go. Now this may take a second, so until it loads, I'm going to do a hard cut and we'll be right back. And we're back. This is the screen that pops up, and we see already that we have on the left our language selection, and in the middle of the screen we have try Ubuntu or install Ubuntu. Now, if we do a try, it's going to install the entire operating system in the RAM for a live operating system. We can get deeper into that later on. That's more of the analyzing a system, forensics, and all that other great stuff. But for now, we're just going to install Ubuntu. And we're going to select our languages for the interface and the keyboard. We're just going to hit continue because it's set to English already. And here we're going to select normal installation. Now, if you remember in the Rocky Linux in the previous video, we did a minimal installation. Now it's different here. You can see right below that a minimal is just the web browser and basic utilities. If we do a normal, it gives us web browser, utilities, office software, games, and media players. So the whole shebang. And then for our other options, we can download updates while installing Ubuntu. If you're wanting to do just a quick install based on what we have, which is the installation CD or DVD in ISO format, we can definitely uncheck this and save our time on actual installs from the internet. This is the perfect solution if you're doing a standalone host system in your VirtualBox environment. So let's say you have this Mac right here, and for whatever reason, you don't have it connected to the internet and you're bringing everything to it, you would uncheck this. But since we are connected to the network and have internet access, as you saw in the previous video for our natting, we're going to leave this checked so we can download all the updates as well, and we're going to hit continue. And it may take a second because, again, resource limitations on the actual host itself. But if it takes too long, I'm just going to do a hard cut and make sure that we can skip all the waiting time. Oh, there we go. So now it's going to ask us what we actually want to do with the hard disk itself. Let's say that there's something else on the disk and we want to reformat and wipe it out. This would be erase disk and install Ubuntu. We already know that there's nothing on that virtual disk that we allocated to this already, so that's okay to do that as well. And more detailed installation would be advanced features or something else. We're just doing a basic on a brand new virtual hard disk. So we're just going to hit install now. This is just a summary of what we're actually going to do and where it's actually going to be installed at. Now, this doesn't indicate a virtual disk because as far as Ubuntu knows right now, we're in a physical environment, not a virtual one. So it's referring to the hard disk by its actual disk numbers of 000 and referring to it as a actual hard disk. And that's the beauty of virtual machines as we click continue over that summary, because virtual machines act as their own operating system, and the only thing that knows it's virtual is us, the administrator. Now, there are a few different details we can go into way later on when we start talking about forensics and security and preventive security, but for now, it does not know it's a hard disk or a virtual machine. This is for time zone. We're going to leave Chicago because that's Central Standard Time. And for here, we're going to type in our name. My name is Erik. It's going to create a default computer name for this. We're going to, which is Erik VirtualBox. That's okay. Our username is Erik. We're going to pick the password of $, capital W O R D. Capital P at $, capital W O R D. And I'm going to select login automatically, so that way we don't have to go through the login screen. I'm just kind of speeding up the process here. But if you leave it on require my password to log in, that's a standard operating system nowadays. And we could also connect it to Active Directory. Lesson for another time. We're going to hit continue, and we're going to go into the next step of actually copying the files and downloading things that we need from the internet. Now this is going to take a little bit, and if you want, I can just expand that right there, and it can give you a play-by-play of what's actually going on. And I'm going to hard cut here until this part is complete. Be right back.
Addendum.
Hey, I just realized that if you let this Mac go into screensaver mode while the Ubuntu is installing in the virtual environment, it will crash. So I had to restart. I'm up to the same point now, but I just wanted to point that out just in case you're having that problem at home. So you have to keep an eye on it, keep jiggling your mouse a little bit just to make sure that it doesn't go to sleep or anything. And that way the Ubuntu will keep installing like it's supposed to. But I'm still going to let this finish and go do all of its thing before we go to the next step. Be right back. All right, so everything finally downloaded and installed successfully. That took about 30 minutes. We're going to go ahead and click the restart now and restart our virtual machine that has Ubuntu on it. Now we also want to make sure that it unmounts or dismounts, however you want to refer to it, the ISO. And we simply do that by going to our VirtualBox overlay that runs all the VMs and look in the where the big mouse is and for our storage, and you'll see the IDE device 0 optical drive is empty. So it automatically ejected it, dismounted it, unmounted it, however you want to refer to it. So that way, when we boot back up, it's going to boot into the actual virtual hard drive itself for Ubuntu as we continue. So while it boots up, it's going through its initial setup. Please remove the installation medium and then press enter. It's already undone. So that's why we wanted to do a check to make sure that that optical drive was empty inside of the VirtualBox itself. Now, as you can see, it's going ahead and starting up for its full actual operating system and not in the actual RAM itself. Again, that's a lesson for a different time. And so as this boots up, I'll do a hard cut here so that way we can skip the wait time and the spinning circle. I promise you won't miss anything. Be right back. All right, we're back and went through its whole thing, and here we are. We're in Ubuntu itself inside the virtual machine, and it says connect to your online accounts. Now, this is a personal preference. We're not going to be doing that in this. We're going to go ahead and hit skip on that. Oh, let me go back to the previous one so we know what's going on. And this is Ubuntu Pro. Upgrade this machine to Ubuntu Pro for security. We're going to skip for now because we just want the basic Ubuntu operating system. We're going to hit next and see if what the next one is. Help improve Ubuntu. I don't want to send any system info back. That's just my preference. If you want to, by all means, we're going to hit next. And we're going to keep location services turned off. Again, another personal preference of me. And go to next, and we're ready to go, and we're going to hit done. This is just showing all the different applications that are on Ubuntu as a basic install. We're going to hit done, and you can see right here, this is the actual software updater itself. Now, there's two different ways to do this. You can wait for it to pop up automatically like this, or you could, and we're going to say remind me later, and I'm going to show you how to do it inside of Terminal. You're going to right click on the desktop and go to Open in Terminal. And we're going to start by typing sudo, as we did in the previous video where we were installing Rocky Linux. And we're going to say apt get update. Our password is capital P at $, capital WORD. Oh, I'm sorry. There's no get. I like showing my mistakes on here so that way everybody can learn. It's sudo apt update. And what it's doing right now is getting with all the repositories. And this is similar to the Windows update method. If you're more familiar with Windows, when we do that automatic update or check for updates, this is just how we do it inside of the terminal for Ubuntu. Now, you could have easily clicked install now. It's doing the same thing, except in GUI form. We're just doing it right here inside of the terminal. Now, once we get the update, the reason we do the update first is to get a list of everything that can be upgraded. So we're getting the updated list of software that has updates to them. It's not doing the actual update itself. For that, we're going to hit up and replace update with upgrade. And we're going to hit enter. And you can see here that this operation, after this operation, 2,749 kilobytes of additional disk space will be used. So now we're upgrading everything that we just got the update files for. And if you're curious, that's all right here of the things that will be upgraded based off of that updated list. Now the default option is yes. We're going to go with yes. And it's going to go ahead and do its download and install of different updates that for the Ubuntu operating system. Once this is complete, I'll be right back. All right, so that took about 5 minutes. And as you can see here, we're back to our regular prompt, and we're going to close that terminal out. And that's all there is to it. We're going to verify our network connectivity by opening up a Firefox web browser that comes default with Ubuntu. And when that opens up, we're just going to go to Google just to make sure that our natting inside of VirtualBox works. For more about that, you can definitely check out the previous video that we did on this. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go to, Command A for all, is it? I'm just going to select the whole thing, type in google.com. And once this loads, like it just did, we know that our network connectivity is solid and the Ubuntu operating system has been installed successfully in our virtual environment on our Mac. I hope this has been great for you as far as learning how to do virtual machines and different Linux type of operating systems inside of a virtual environment for Mac. Now, we did use VirtualBox, and maybe later on we'll start getting more into the VMware side of the house if you want. But for this and much, much more, definitely check out Panola.edu and the Cybersecurity Program. And if you want, there are many other programs on Panola that you can definitely check out. Shoot an email over to the admissions today. And if you want, keep like and subscribe here on the channel to follow for more that we do in our classes, because this comes from one of our cybersecurity classes. Take care.